Welcome to Sankofa Summer School. I am your founder, Dr. Michelle Taylor, and I'm so happy that you're joining us this evening. We have a wonderful class prepared tonight, and we're so happy that you're joining us. There's a couple of things to think about. I know we've had people asking us, can we still join? Can we still join? Registration closed, but there's always 2026, and all of our classes will be available at the end of our session. So they'll be available on YouTube and you can watch the replay. Also, if you register for Sankofa Summer School, you have the link in your inbox and you can watch it at any time until the end of this, until the end of the session. So just want to keep everybody informed about that. But tonight we are going to have a wonderful presentation by Dr. Shanae Jeffries, and I just want to introduce you all to her, let you know a little bit more about her before I bring her to the stage. We're in for a really great time. I'm excited about this one, so I hope that you are too. So Dr. Shanae S. Jeffries is a dynamic scholar practitioner with a PhD in sociology from the University of North Texas, where she also pursued interdisciplinary studies in workforce development, learning technology, and sociolinguistics. Excuse me. She currently serves as a sociology professor at Collin College, while leading full-time in the field of healthcare market research and strategic insights. With over a decade of experience in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Dr. Jeffries specializes in issues of social stratification and inequality, examining how systems of race, class, gender, age, and ability shape access to opportunity. Her research and professional work focus on naming's relationship with workforce and labor discrimination, as well as qualitative methodologies that elevate lived experiences into actionable insights. Dr. Jeffries is also a passionate advocate for mental health, therapy, and mindfulness, bringing a holistic and empathetic perspective to her work in both academia and the industry. Originally from the military base of Fort Cavazos, Texas, she is deeply rooted in her community and dedicated to fostering inclusive, equitable environments wherever she leads. You can visit her website, shantaychantel.com, but we will give you that information at the end to make sure you have access to that. Dr. Jeffries, are you ready? Ready to go? We got a thumbs up? All right. Bringing her to the stage. Y'all, we were figuring this out. Listen, y'all don't know what happens behind the scenes, but we make it work and we make it happen. All right. So I'm glad to see you all in the chat. Put a one in the chat if you're here, if you're ready. You ready to talk about naming? You ready for this? Because I'm ready for this. And I'm ready to sit back and take my notes. You're right on time. That's right. You just got here. You're right on time. If you're watching the replay, we do have people in the live chat. So sometimes you will see us reference that. And but this is all for you anyway. All right, so I'm going to take my leave, Dr. Jeffries, and you're going to go ahead and drop some knowledge on us. All right, thank you.
Can you hear me? I really hope so. I'm not sure if you can hear me. I guess I'll start. Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about Nommo and the power of naming as Black people. My name is Dr. Shanae S. Jeffries. I am a sociologist by training, and I am currently in the area of DFW, Texas. Okay. Uh-oh.
I just want to pause you. Your slides aren't showing, so I'm going to add them to the stage for you. It's okay. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. I got you.
Could you hear me?
Yeah, we can totally hear you. I was trying to give you the thumbs up in the back page. I don't know if you were looking. I was trying to give you the thumbs up, but that's okay. So here we go. And I'm gonna leave now, and I'm gonna stage manage. But now you're good. Okay. Whatever you're doing. Here we go. All right.
So you know who I am. Okay. Cool. Now we're going to talk about the power of your identity. So identity for Black people has a history filled with style, with pain, with thankfulness, with soul, everything that's germane to us as a people. Our identity is something that we hold dear. In the social sciences, particularly sociology, psychology, anthropology, they study like a field of their discipline is connected just to identity. how we develop it, the id, how we develop it as a group, how we develop it as a culture. And we can know, like, when someone's in the area, that we can pick them out and say, hey, that's somebody that I would like have something in common with because of that development of identity. So we're here to talk about names. Names have social capital in the Black community. We pay homage to others or people that give us safety. For example, hopefully you've seen the movie Sinners. So in Sinners, we know that Smoke and Stack, their names rang. If you heard like, oh, Stack, Smoke is in town, the twins are in town, people were fearful. And so that is something that just their names bring a certain social capital, a certain air of respect into the atmosphere just by mentioning them in conversation. And this is in part because of what they did, the lives that they lived, but also the name and paying homage. And we'll talk about this a lot more. But like the parental process of giving names, that rings within a community. And they know it's like that factor that you want. So if you also remember in Sinners, Preach, we know that someone who is nicknamed like Preach, or if they're like Preacher's son or something like that, we already know that that's associated with the church. Their father is probably a preacher. They may be the son of a preacher, or they may actually be a preacher themselves. But either way, there is power in the identity, just off that, the way that you interact with people, the way that you move through a room, there's power in that, and other people can recognize that. Also, I do want to make this as conversational. That's the word, as conversational as possible. So if there's any comments about like what's going on in the slide, or if you have an example, I implore you and suggest that you like reach out in the chat, or if you have a question, we can facilitate and go back and forth. But this is meant to be like an interactive experience. So let's talk about Nommo. Nommo implies the power of words to create a harmony and balance in the face of disharmony. This is an Afrocentric term that identifies the power that words create. So it's something that says, within this word, I notice and I pay respect to what this brings about, like what this brings into the room with us when you say this name. So speaking of like good or bad things that can go either way, this comes from the power within a name. So what you call a thing, it really matters. Again, parents, as they're naming their children, what you call your child really matters. There's been a lot of studies that have looked at like the names that parents give their children, if that predicts their outcome in life. And there are mixed bags. We'll talk more about that later too. But as we're thinking, like going through life, if you want your child to have a certain experience, people think that giving your child one type of name may be that extension. That may be what helps them float along. That's why we take the time to name things. And even if you think about like tangible objects, whenever you get a pet, the first thing that you do is you name it or you rename it from what name it had before. Also, for example, imagine if instead of introducing me as Professor Jeffries or Dr. Jeffries, I was introduced as inmate 31773. Would you still give me the same respect in this presentation? Or would that give some other connotation that maybe isn't here right now? So that, like that name, that connotation, that moniker, that means something in social places and within our cultural capital. Also, for my Harry Potter fans, huge Harry Potter fan, go Gryffindor. If I say Voldemort, Harry Potter fans know immediately what comes up with that connotation. You can see his face, like we know. And we know that within Harry Potter, there was the who shall not be named. So even like that name brought so much power into a room that it would attack. That name just mentioned said attack. And so again, the power that we have from these names, it comes within our culture, but it's also felt outright. So even if you were not a Harry Potter fan, you still knew at some point that Voldemort is probably the bad guy. So again, Even in your community or outside your community, it spreads. We know what these words mean. Oh, okay. Sorry, it jumped up. So my name is Shanae. Hearing my name, you most likely made at least two assumptions. One, Shanae is Black. I have not met a non-Black Shanae. Sinead O'Connor, I think Irish, but Shanae is a Black name, and we know that. Two, gender. Have you met a male Shanae? No. You've probably met a male Shane, but you haven't met a male Shanae. So even thinking about that, coming into the room with that, you know something about me. I'll give you an example. So my freshman year, people would walk down the hallways and look at the names on the door to see like who they would be friends with. And so for some of the Black people that were in my dorms, they walked and they saw Shanae, and we knew automatically that might be my homegirl, because she is a Black woman coming to college at the same time that I am. So there's some power within that even though I'm not there, my name speaks for me, and they know exactly what that connotation is. Okay, so we're going to take a second. This is like the interactive part, if you can. Take a second and Google or chat GPT, if you like, what your name means. You may know it off bat, but what does your name mean? It may mean something in a different language. It may mean something that you already know, like a tangible item. But what does your name mean? I hope you're Googling. If you find something cool about your name, feel free to share it in the chat, of course. I'll go on, but my name, Shanae, means God is gracious. Now, as we get further along into the presentation, I bring that into the room. Those who say my name are saying a prayer for some others. God is gracious. So it's the power that your name has, even when you're not in the room, and also the power that we have and we structure as a society and a community in this like Afrocentric centered place. We know the power that certain words have, and we know that they might not be the same in other cultures. Are there any questions in the chat for me or cool name discoveries that anyone's made? I can't see anything, so I'm probably going to keep going. Okay, so the most popular naming practices, if you think of this even like a brand, there's power in words. And just like entrepreneurs take so much time to cultivate the right name, it needs to be short, it needs to pop, people need to remember it. All of those things, parents take that same type of consideration into naming their child. Are people going to be able to say their child's name correctly? Is this a name that's stereotypically given to a boy or a girl? Do you want an androgynous name? There's a lot of different things that go into this naming practice. And as Black people, we have an extra layer of culture on top of that, because we are looking for names that represent our culture or represent like some part of our struggle. So okay, one of the first motivations for naming is historical. This is honoring past ancestors. So right here in the slide, you see a picture of Martin Luther King Sr., Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther King III, or Trey. So we know that this is something stereotypical of Black males, where they want to pass down their lineage. And it's also a sign of like respect. If you hear someone who is the third or the fourth, you're thinking, oh my goodness, these must be great men, in order for people to keep wanting to name their child after their father's name, after their name. So there's great respect that comes with these historical names as we come into the room. You may think that this If a junior or a Trey comes into the room, you might think that they are well seasoned, like that they have some other input or influence that comes into the room because they have a lineage of fatherhood in their family. After emancipation, so if we go back to enslavement times, after emancipation and during this like great migration to the northern cities and getting out of the Jim Crow South, people changed their surnames to something other than what their master's or their plantation's name was. So that was something that brought a bit of liberty for them, and it rang for freedom that you no longer are attached to your master's name. So as we're looking at this in an Afrocentric context, we know that if you are now naming yourself, you are giving yourself your own identity. And now you have the opportunity to change that in whatever way you would like. Like it's how you shape yourself in society. An example is a man from the Fitzgerald plantation later changed his surname to Gerald. I know it's not a super drastic change, but it is different than what he was called in his master's plantation or what that was associated with. Some people don't know that Gerald comes from the root or the longer of Fitzgerald. Anything in the chat? Because I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Going to assume no. Okay, so the most popular boy name this year, Liam. Anyone want to take a guess what Liam is short for? William. Yes, if you said William. So this is another like abbreviated term of people choosing their own destiny designed by their name. Even if there's a nickname or something like that, if you were deciding to rebrand yourself, you were taking in your identity and taking in the responsibility of saying, like, this is how I want to be respected. When I come into the room, this is what I want people to know about me. Next for boys, the second most popular name of the year is Noah. And so that can be from where, we guess? Noah, biblical. So we have boys who like have more popular historical names from Bible characters, but also those who have lineage. Also, the last thing I'm going to talk about with this historical piece is when parents shield their name or they morph their names together, or if you get like an influx in, what is that word? When you mix together, like maybe a grandfather's name and the other grandfather's name or something like that. So the paternal and the maternal grandfather's name to name a boy. This is something that, again, is honoring tradition. And it would be assumed that since they are someone who wanted to give their child a name that represents these two people, they would keep the historical lineage going because they would tell more to their child about how that child got that name. So now he has a historical context for how he should live his life and how he goes forward because of those familial ideas. Awesome. Okay, so remember before when I mentioned Noah, there's also a big, huge sect of names that are based on spiritual or faith-based contexts. So we think of some of the most popular names like Noah, Sarah, Adam, John. These are all found in biblical texts. And so it is very intentional that some of these names are driven from the Bible because of the assumed blessing or the connotation that that name brings. This, again, would be the power of Nommo, saying that we are seeing what these people have done. They're great figures. And so we'd like to emulate, or we'd like to have our child be within that sacred destiny that was given to that person. So in the Bible, Peter is a very strong man and he walks with Jesus. And so you would want your son Peter to also be a very strong man. Maybe you want him to be a preacher. Who knows? In the Bible, Hannah, she dedicated her son Samuel to God because she wanted this to be God. God gave her a miracle. And so she said, this is my child to you. I shall name him Samson. Also, God was sure to give Jesus a name. So if we're thinking back to the story of Bethlehem, there were a few instructions that the angels gave to Mary and Joseph, and one of them was that his name shall be called Jesus. And so this shows even the importance within like the whole cultural context within any type of divinity. There is a purpose of naming or unnaming. So within like religions who do not believe in one deity, they do not have like a supreme. There are others who have one supreme, and it is just that they do not know. So maybe to the universe, maybe to some sacred temple or something like that. But there are a group of people who, in their religion, they pray to the unknown. And that within itself gives power, because you're saying, like, I'm praying to this person or to this body, this deity, and they are all knowing in everything that they do. So they can give me anything. It's unknown because I can't fathom. And so again, that would be what you bring into a room. So if you have a spiritually or faith-based name, most times people can pick up on that religious context, and they can assume a couple of things about you, one or two, that maybe your family is religious, and most likely your gender. There are not a lot of androgynous names in the Bible, androgynous being male or female. So spiritual or faith-based names are rooted in symbolism or faith. Regardless of the religion, there's some sort of symbolic context or event that causes a parent to name their child something after that sacred moment. And so when the child again comes into the room, you know that this child is called Rapha. Where does Rapha come from? Jehovah Rapha is the Lord who heals. And so even within the symbolism of like spiritually based words, they have power. We know that they do. They're a sign of worship. And so when you say this child's name, you're doing a sign of worship. When other people say this, they're bringing that worship into the room. And that's something that is assumed by their faith, that they have just protected their child because of this name. I hate that I'm having so much trouble with this. Okay. This is where I would ask if anybody has an example, or that if their name comes up and it's like spiritually based, some of the things that they have encountered or what they experience when coming into a room. For example, if you see someone whose name is like Micah or Joseph, you would assume again that their family is religiously based. So just seeing if anybody had those type of encounters in the chat. But also on a last note, Shekinah glory, being the glory that's brought to God in one of the most purest forms, that is also a popular name. And so for some, it is a sign of worship. And that's the power that it brings into the room, because you know their religion. You know that they serve a mighty God. You know that they serve an unknown deity. So this is something that encounters with them, and they bring into each conversation that they have. So the naming also follows the person as the naming describes the person. Okay, assimilation. Let's talk about it. Assimilation being the process by which the non-dominant group becomes part of the dominant group to blend in. And in this case, a lot of people have the assumption, especially in America, that the non-dominant group will be Black people, dominant group being white people. And so there's a thought that in order to make it in society, you have to conform to the white norms in order to make it. If you just conform to the Black norms, then you would be selling yourself short because they won't take you seriously. So there's a catch-22. So the dominant society, Eurocentric, may accept you, and that would be at the risk of your Afrocentric culture, or the dominant society does not accept you, and you've risked social capital within your home community because you've tried to assimilate out of your culture and into another. So assimilation tends to get a negative connotation because it's conforming to Eurocentric society. It may be assumed that you're sacrificing your Blackness for that. And so we move into this. a strategic set that people have used to name their children in order to live within societal world, especially within the realization that we live in a Eurocentric society. They have decided to put business in the front. This is where you see a very common name. You would see like Tommy, John, Sarah, maybe Rebecca. Very common names that tend to be on the white side, but can also be on the black side. When they're, for example, if they're going to a job interview, the hirer maybe won't know what to expect when they're coming in. And so this has been documented in a lot of application paradigm studies where they'll use the same resume, and one will have a black name and one will have a white name. And you'll see that the white name gets hired or gets called in for interviews more times than the black name. So in this strategic play, we have a celebration that there is some sort of result or not pushback, some sort of, sorry, my slide stopped. Some sort of integration within society that does not limit or does not risk their blackness at all. So it says that we understand the world that we're in, and we also want to celebrate our culture. So there may be someone who has a traditionally white or racially ambiguous first name, but then they will have a very, very cultural middle name. So if we think of like John Devante, we know that Devante is a very common black name rooted in Afrocentrism. Even the it's telling that this would happen as I'm trying to say linguistics. Even the linguistic capital within the name is still deriving from these African syllables or what is most common within that dialect, so that we're creating names that are a homage to our Afrocentric or Afro roots. So within this, we celebrate. So because, again, this is centered in Afrocentricity, we don't want to say that these accommodations or this thought of integration is negative. It's not. This is the identity of more people. So again, as we get back to the Nommo of this, when someone who has an androgynous or racially ambiguous first name and then a cultural middle name walks into a room, they bring that power with them. They still have their middle name. They still have their roots. Their parents thought it would be easier for them, or there's some assumption that if they had a Eurocentric name that they would be able to get further. But that does not deprive them of who they are. That does not stop their cultural balance when they come into a room. John, very popular name, is also religious. It also may be historical. So again, there's this negative connotation, but when we think about the different strings, there may be a false judgment that comes that doesn't need to be there. So we'll think that John may be coming again with that historical context that we talked about in the earlier slides, where he's coming from a lineage of Johns or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Lastly, unfortunately, we have cultural. Choosing a name for the culture, choosing a name for that reclamation of Black freedom, Black power that comes within, especially the American community, because of what we suffered. So within the Black power civil rights movement, there was a reclamation of Black names. We saw less Sally's and Sarah's, and we saw more LaQuisha's, Trevante, things like that. So these, again, are sociolinguistical differences. It does not make the name any harder to say, despite the trouble that other people may have with it. But these linguistic clusters are not unknown in the world. I saw a tweet recently that said, if you can say Schwarzenegger, you can say LaKeisha. you know, like it's something that seems to be a mental block, but within the culture, we know immediately. We know exactly what this is. And again, it's that shared social capital and shared camaraderie. When we walk into a room, again, Shanae, walking into a room, you know that I'm a Black girl. You may automatically feel a bit safer because you know who is coming into the room with you. And that brings a social capital, and that also brings a sense of safety. And so again, that's something that has power as it walks through the room. You have power given from your own name and what that means, even if it is something that is very unique to the point where you don't know. It may just be like a made up word, but also there are some symbolic clusters within that name that can be derived from other places, like la, sha, key, the use of a Q, things like that, apostrophes, spaces, dashes. These are things that we know are rooted in Black culture and rooted in the rich, rich history that Black culture has, and celebrating that as if nothing were wrong with it, because it's not. The way that Black people identify with themselves is up to Black people. And as a culture, I think we get it. So within this Afrocentric perspective, there's a great opportunity to even do more research. I think even something like the inclusion of like nicknames and what that does within the social capital of a family, as opposed to like calling your real name outside of the home. Another example would be when we talked about that business in the front, party in the back. So it may be that a child is only called their first name when out in society, but when in household, they're called by their middle name. And that again brings a different type of social capital within, because you know already if somebody is calling you John, this is not someone that I normally connect with. But if someone is calling me Daquan, I know that they know me. So that is what I have for now. I was going to leave time for questions. I'm not sure how we're going to do this, but if you have any questions or want to share something within this naming context or have questions about Nommo, please feel free to ask. I feel like I've been sprinting a bit vocally, so I'll give it a rest.
Girl, we right here with you. We were chatting it up. Everybody, there's the website. I told you that she would share the website. Please write that down, and so that you can have that there. And I'll just put us up here so they can look at that as well. So yes, we did have some questions. I noticed that you couldn't see the screen, and yeah. I'm like, can you see the back? Can you see the StreamYard now? Can you see?
No, if I stop sharing, it might be able
to see. I already stopped your sharing. So
okay, awesome. Let me catch up.
Yeah, let's come back over here. And then you come over to the StreamYard, and then you can see all the comments in the chat that you missed.
Let me see. I was talking to myself over here, so
it happens. Listen, it happens to the best of us. Especially if you don't use this a lot. I'm a streamer, so I'm kind of like gotten the hang of it, but it's all good. We were able to get her presentation, right, y'all? She was dropping that knowledge, and y'all were in the chat talking about it. So I think we had a question, and I think. Mo, can you see it now? It says, aren't those names typically French? And I was thinking about that, that question of how, because of colonization, many of us were adopting these kind of French names, but also coming from our New Orleans cousins.
Yes. And
had that, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So a lot of people will say, like within those French names, like, oh, it's just French, and that also, if we go back to, don't tell her I forgot her name, but Beyonce's mother,
Mama Tina,
her book talking about, like the Creole community and things like that. So it has been adopted. So it may be like historically French when we go back, but because of the transatlantic slave trade, because of those ports, we know that French has also been infused in the Black community, and we can identify parts of that as Creole. And so that too is taken and moved forward, and it's no longer just like within the boot of New Orleans. Now we know that the laws, the shahs, they spread all over. So again, that Great Migration moving, love this, love sociology. Ask me everything else.
Yes. Yeah. No, because I remember learning that, and I was just like, yo, where did this come from? So I was looking, and I was like, oh, that's our cousins from the boot, and they were teaching us, and then it began to spread because they were moving. I was like, that's who we are, right? It's again like everything that you was talking about. You was talking about that cultural stuff. You was dropping it, and I'm like, I hope people are picking up what you are putting down. That like, there's still something in us, even when we take on these other names. There's still some extra sauce. We got another question in the chat. I love how we give each other prefixes like lil and big. Is that an ancient practice that use similar words? That's a good one.
That's a really good one. I'll say first off the bat, I'm not sure. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I think it may be like a regional thing that again infiltrated and spread across. But that's really, I think that would be a really interesting study because that's a phenomenal question.
I have a thought on this.
Yes, please share.
So I'm always going to talk about cultural memory. I'm going to talk about how we do things that we don't even necessarily know where they come from. So I actually was studying ancient Egyptian. I was studying the Meta Nature for a while. And one of the things that I learned is that a lot of our linguistic tics come from them. And so like, if you saw like 2 images of a woman or 3 of them, there was emphasis there. It was trying to tell us that was maybe somebody's grandmother, somebody's aunt, that kind of thing. The size of them might be a big, might be a little, to try to indicate those kinds of things. And I think that we carry that kind of emphasis, but also naming our people to keep track of them, right?
Yes.
So, that like Black women, for example, especially Southern, a lot of them have the same names. They gave their babies the same name so they could find them if they were ever sold away, right? And kind of that like, have you seen Elizabeth? She looks like me, like a little version of me. And so there was some parts of that little and big thing that was in there to kind of indicate we're all the same lineage, but maybe, it's little, it's big because, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm thinking. And I think that that's definitely a great study, and I hope you do it because I would like to join you. And let's do it together, and let's be like scholars together.
Yes. I do.
I'm always looking for sisters to work with on stuff like this. I love that. That was a great question. Oh, somebody said, "What about auntie and uncle?"
Honorific, social. What is the word? Kinship, fictive kinship. When we see other people out of like respect. It's within the Black community, it's respectful to say auntie, uncle, so that you're not treating them as their peers. But also there is this fictive kinship when you see somebody that you know for sure is coming from where you're from, you're inclined to speak, And so it's just it's that honor that goes like that we're all part of the same family. That's that kinship. When you see me, you know me. And so you remind me of my auntie, you remind me of my uncle, and I just want to respect that for you. I know that it's gotten very popular on social media, and we've had a lot of like back and forth about.
I'm going to ask you what you thought about the discourse because, I'm older. I want to say that. I let everybody know I'm 46 years old. Last of Gen X, raised in a different place. I'm only now learning that some people find auntie or uncle offensive, perhaps because of where I grew up. But I always understood the way you just said, like it's an honorific. But then there's this discourse now where people are like, well, don't call me this, don't call me that. And I get it. Everybody, again, self-determination, you have the right to do that. But I'm more interested in kind of this vehement rejection of that. And I don't know if it's internalized ageism. I don't know if it's internalized European disconnect from community that some people have. Like, I don't know. What do you think about this discourse? Like, what have been your thoughts on that?
First of all, I think the internet, but
the internet will ruin everything, right?
Yes, if we keep talking in an echo stream. Anyway, I think that there is, just like when newly freed Southern moved to the North, and there was a certain culture that did not follow within the North. And so I think that there are certain pockets where uncle and auntie is respected, like saying ma'am and sir. But in other areas, people take offense to that. Like, I'm not ma'am, that's my mom. And so it's just like, I'm in an honor, and they took it as a personal offense.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. And I think that when people can communicate and have those kinds of conversations, again, at the end of the day, it's all about self-determination, Kuji Chagali. You get to choose how you want to be called. And that's across the board, whether it's honorific, whether you're trans and you change your name,
Yes.
whether you get married and you change your name. However, we respect the name that you choose for yourself. I just think that more people need to maybe interrogate it a little bit more, like what's happening in your body when somebody calls you that, and like
Yeah.
what is that
Is this a
bringing up
trigger?
for you? Yes, it's a
Yeah.
trigger, something else going on, or that kind of thing.
Is that a cultural
It
behavior?
could be. Is it a cultural thing, and is a cultural disconnect? So let's share our cultures. Let's talk.
Yeah.
I think for me that's always the answer. It's like, okay, you do something different, I do something different. Let's talk about it.
I love a conversation about somebody's name. First name, last name, all of it.
Come on. All right, let's see. Do we have any questions?
Big Frank and Little Frank.
Yes. Calling folks that are not family cousins would also be an honorific. Oh, I like that question.
I think so. I think it's part, again, of that fictive kinship and being raised by a community or a village instead of just being raised by a single person or a single partnership. So that's something that I know that we've adopted today. So, for example, your mom's best friend's kids might be your cousins. But, in earlier neighborhoods, that whole neighborhood block might be your cousin because their mom knows your mom and they will tell your mom if you did something. So you may get an honorary spanking, but it's just like everybody's within that community.
Honor this ass whooping, yeah.
Yes.
No, I think about that a lot too. And I actually just saw a thread where someone was saying, when did people start calling people cousins and someone who's not best friend, auntie, and all these things like that? And I'm like, part of it is, folks acting like the world began when they were born. So that's also a thing. And it's
only what they know is true.
Only what they know is true, right? And so, like, those of us that have these experiences, will share, this was the norm for us. And I think you touched on something really important, Dr. Jeffries, the community aspect, right? How much of the community are we losing, right? I in my neighborhood where I live, it's like a townhouse community. I rarely see kids out there playing with each other.
Exactly.
And you see them, they're just with their parents. You rarely see kids playing together anymore. You don't see that kind of, I don't know these kids' names. Like, and I've been here for several years and I don't know any of these kids' names. And I'm just like, I didn't grow up like that. No shade, no tea, but everybody from the time I left my house to the time I got to school, everybody along the way knew my name. They knew I was Lorraine's daughter. You know what I'm saying? So like, I think that there's been a shift. And I think the quarantine just made it worse. It really pulled everybody back further inside. So even just that sense of community is really dwindling. So we're not, they're not connecting to the cousin idea.
No, I try to remember that things change and stay the same. So it might be something that's, yes, you are saying that right. It might be something that is just recycled in a different way, like social online communities, as opposed to the physical communities that we had. Fictive kinship, it's an anthropological word, but it talks about the sense of family, the sense of home that you feel with other people that are like you or have a similar struggle or things like that. So within the Black community, it would be like, again, walking down the street and saying like, good morning, Unc, or good morning, something like that. But also it could be when you are in an area where you don't know other people, and maybe there's like a young child running around. And so if that child is Black, you kind of stop them and say, hey, watch out there, things like that. So it's things where like we're protecting our community as if we are true extended family.
Yeah. And I talk about it in terms of like how I don't engage in fictive kinship with like brothers that abuse women, right? Because there's this idea that, oh, we're all Black and we're all family. And we absolutely are. And I don't mess with some cousins. And, and so I'm not going to feel embarrassment because you got popped for doing some heinous things. I'm not going to receive that as, oh, all Black people or anything like that. I'm not going to allow myself that I'm also going to acknowledge you're allowed to be a human being, and that Black people are not any different than any other human being. So we all mess up, right? Like I think about it in those terms too. And I really love how you shared that part, because I think there's like those two sides to it, So definitely thank you. Any other questions in the chat? I was trying to send you a private chat earlier, so there's about a 15-second delay in the chat.
Okay.
So it's all good. No, because like you give the space, and that's really important for the people that are watching the replay. Give some time to think about these things, right? And so that's really wonderful. So if we don't have any more questions,
can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Did anyone find out something new about their name?
Oh, that's a good one. Let's see if I can put this in there. Let's see. That's a good question. I like that. I put in the chat, like, my name means one who is like God.
Ooh.
And I mean, but it was also like one of the most popular names of the year.
Yeah.
Right. And I know why I was named. My dad kind of gave me the name after a woman who really helped him get through college, and he just wanted to honor her in that way. And I was like, "You sure that was it, Daddy? Because I know you." Like, I was like, "My mama right there," But my mom had two names for me. One would have been Georgia after my dad, because his name is, or Samantha after my grandfather's middle name, Samuel, because we keep names in our family.
Yes.
And so she was thinking about that. I was like, I'll take Michelle, thanks. But it's interesting that it was one. I'll take that. I'm good.
You could have been
but I love that it means like one who is like God, because I'm actually an atheist, and so I just love the irony of that. I'm like, well, I'll be God. I'll be your God.
I'm like,
I guess whatever God is, I'm like that. So it's always been an interesting thing. But here we got a question. Can we talk about this in a political perspective, like how the Black Panther Party started calling the police pigs?
Yes, excellent.
Today, Doc.
Yes, excellent question. I think again, this would be like names having power and that derogatory kind of response to pigs. So one, there is the instance of Irish, we'll say Irishmen, but Irish people being somewhat akin to slaves during a part of enslavement, but then looking for some way to like assimilate higher and increase their status in society. So one, this was a poke at Italian people, but also this is the derogatory term that you are the swine. Like in the Bible, there's nothing lower than swine. In the prodigal son, he goes to actually like live with the slime because he feels so worthless. And so that pig, there may be another explanation, but for my explanation, I would say the derogatory sense of the term and how they were just there, like they're causing this odor in the community as a sense, like it's something that rings through just negative and you can't get it away, and it just goes through, So
I didn't even think about the biblical aspect before. That idea of casting legion into the pigs.
Yes. It's so good. It's so good.
Oh, right. Somebody gave the flames. Like, oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that one. I like this. Barbara says, I didn't learn anything new. Barbara has Greek roots for barbarian or strange, but recently I realized as I get deeper in my Alaska Native community, a lot of women my age-ish have vintage white names, right?
Yes.
And so Barbara, we're assuming that you are Indigenous. Yes. Let us know that. But yeah, let's talk. What is that? What do you think about that?
Let's talk about the forced assimilation of Native American people in the US. Big, I mean, atrocity. But yes, within like these Native American communities, we know that white settlers came in and stripped them of their culture, made them go into the Christianity, the Christian religion, go into school and this traditional like work schedule and things like that for the children, forcing them to pray. So within that assimilation, a lot of Native Americans kind of lost their culture because they would be beat or, treated harshly for still carrying on their culture. Like if they're talking in their native language, that is a reason for a beating in a boarding school or things like that. And so it was the forced assimilation that brought a lot of these white names into Native American communities, even into some Black communities. So like I'll say that my grandmother's name is Sally. And I was just, well, you couldn't get a more basic name. Like, where did this come from? But there's these like Gertrudes or Eartha Jean, things like that, where you're just like, I don't know where this is. I can't tell if Dolly Mae is Black or white, like it's different things where it's just like these European names are being brought around and they kind of cycle down. There's a piece about this in Freakonomics. If you've ever seen Freakonomics, highly suggest it. It's the first set in the video. But it talks about how if you look at the most popular names like Brittany, Ashley, Nicole, things like that, in the early 90s, they came to circle down to the low economic status because they wanted their children to be like the very rich Ashley that they saw, And so it's that emulation where at some point these names cycle down and the top class switches what is now called privilege.
Yeah. I was going to ask that, like how like lobster used to be like grunt stuff and now they have
and now it's
like that. And that's so interesting, Barbara, because my paternal grandmother's name is Barbara. She's also indigenous. And so that she's a Black indigenous woman and her name is Barbara as well. So now I'm like kind of thinking about this, like, was there something with that name and that kind of approach to that? Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So somebody said their job used to be next to a pig slaughterhouse and it's stench. Yeah, and it's disgusting. It's, and okay, let's see. I want to remove Moses and replace it with another African name, but I'm afraid people might not be able to pronounce both. Can you talk a little bit about pronunciation and like what you do in the face of people who like refuse to pronounce your name? Drop us a little something with that. What can we take with us for that?
Okay. Are y'all ready? Because this is also one of my favorite topics. Next research paper. There are different perspectives that I've heard from people that I've talked to. One of the most interesting perspectives that I heard is that some people let them mispronounce their name because they feel like it's a superpower that they hold. So they can say their name, but the other person cannot, and that's their own detriment. So that's one perspective. Another is to make them say your name every time. Every time. It's not Shane, it's not Shana, it's not Shania, it's Shanae. And so that brings in like a dominant power into the room because you're going to respect me. Like it's no longer like a passive, just submissive that I think they're talking to me. You're not talking to me unless you say Shanae. And so that it's up to you. There are also some people who go by a nickname. And so I did that for a while. I was tired of being called Shania, Shane, all of these things. And so I went by Shay because it's racially ambiguous. It's also androgynous. There are boys named Shay. And I was like, cool, this is going to get me in the door because who has a problem saying Shay? But at some point I kind of felt like, am I denying my actual presence? Like, am I denying the God is gracious by going with this in shortened version that I did to make other people comfortable? And so there is a podcast that I listen to, but the one thing to take away here is she said, I'm not going to be the only person uncomfortable. So if you want to butcher my name, then we're going to sit here and talk until you say it right. If you need to get out the phonetic alphabet and write it down in syllables, that's what you do. But again, the same way that you get Schwarzenegger, Schlitterbahn, all of these things, you can get Noah, like you can get these African names.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting, like among East Asian, South Asian, African is like wanting to minimize the harm, right? So there's a harm reduction in that. And so like there's empathy there. Like it can't help but have empathy, and I always think to myself, as long as we acquiesce, they'll continue to do it. So it's got to take some folks and like collective commitment. And I like what you said. You're not talking to me unless you say Shanae. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah. That's that.
And that's the essence of Nommo. Nommo is like, without a name, you're nobody. Without that, you are nothing. Like,
so don't call me something else. That's not
something that I'm not.
Yeah.
And also don't put some other name on me because that name has meaning.
That,
But why are you
yes.
putting that on me?
Yes, forced nicknames are also a thing. I'm just going to call you S, or I'm just going to call you T. No, that's not my name.
Diminutive as hell, right?
Mhm.
And it's because of your own discomfort, your
Yes.
own incompatibility, like, well, incapability. Lord, none of us could talk today, and it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. But yeah, like, you know, and so, yeah, so even something like this, they call me Elena instead of Aliana, right? And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm just reading. But like,
If
yeah,
not, let us know. Yeah.
and even something like that. And it's just like, I told you this was my name.
I've said my name.
I've said my name. And I just think about sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some people intentionally do that as a weapon.
They do.
I think
They
some
do.
people intentionally weaponize that.
Yes.
And they do it to try to maybe have power over you.
Those are those microaggressions that just
Yeah.
take at you. Yes. And again, I'm pretty sure I brought it up, but the way to dehumanize somebody in one of the most basic ways is to not honor their name, to give them something like maggot or snob or something like that. We know in like military, like in the process of breaking down to build up, you no longer have an identity. In prison, you no longer have your name. You have your number. And that's a file in the system.
Yep, and it's intentionally to dehumanize you. You are no longer the person that you were. You are now this, right?
Number
Not,
such and such.
not unlike them stripping our ancestors of their given names and
Exactly.
giving them the names that they decided, even to the point of branding them with these new names. Like, you're not even allowed to exist as the human being you were created to be.
Yes.
Ooh.
That's very, it's right in there. That's right. I don't know if we have time. We have
time. We got about 3 minutes.
Okay. I also wanted to bring up very distinctive names, because that's also like a way of carrying forward that power, but also within the Great Migration, you know Ophelia. You don't know many Ophelias. So if you've run into an Ophelia, you know exactly who that is. And that is how you keep track. Like, oh, well, I named my daughter Dorothy Andra. How many other Dorothy Andras do you, if you run across her, let her know I'm looking for her. So it's just, you know, that way of identifying, you know, just knowing that this is your person, because it brings that power with you. You gave that child that name so that you could find them later.
Ain't nobody else in this world named DeBrickashaw but DeBrickashaw Ferguson.
Okay.
Major football star, name stands out. Like, you were going to notice him.
And you can say his name magically now.
Say his name, DeBrickashaw. You know exactly who he is.
That Kamala, that.
Well, they still want to say Kamala. I mean, it gets pronounced different ways, but like, come on, like, they intentionally, she said her name enough times that you know how to say her name. So the intentional mispronunciation is definitely, and it's not so micro an aggression, because come on, you know how they doing it.
Yeah, but it's meant to dehumanize. It's meant to harm and assert power.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, you know, and I just think that there's so much that we could honestly do a part 2 of this. Like, I mean, you know, hopefully those of you in the chat, you got something really great out of this. I want us to all thank Dr. Shanae. Again, Dr. Shanae Jeffries came through, gave us a lot to think about in terms of naming and the power of this and what this means. And even though this was focused on, you know, Black people, because that's what Sankofa Summer School is about, many of you who are not Black are able to get something and make that connection. And that's what this is all about. Like, take from it what you can and see how it resonates. And the thing that I always believe is that everything that we talk about is going to resonate with somebody else, because we are the original people. Yes. So that's it. And then given our experiences, a lot of it will trickle up. It's like, yeah, this has probably also been an experience that you've had as well, right? So again, everybody, thank you. All the thank yous in the chat. We will see you all tomorrow, okay? Yes. Tomorrow, to Black Lives Matter, to God. We hope to see you tomorrow as we are talking about that. Again, thank you, Dr. Jeffries, and we will see y'all tomorrow. All right.
Good night.